behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream.
Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take to you Mary, your wife, for that which is conceived in her is of the Holy Spirit. And she will bring forth a son, and you shall call his name Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins.
For from within, out of the heart of men, proceed evil thoughts, adulteries, fornications, murders, thefts, covetousness, wickedness, deceit, lewdness, an evil eye, blasphemy, pride, foolishness. All these evil things come from within and defile a man. You have heard that it was said, "You shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy." I say to you, love your enemies. Bless those who curse you. Do good to those who hate you. And pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you, that you may be sons of your Father in heaven. Therefore, whoever confesses me before men, him I will also confess before my Father who is in heaven. But whoever denies me before men, him I will also deny before my Father who is in heaven. Assuredly, I say to you that it is hard for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. And again I say to you, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are back here for episode 94 of the Bible Lens podcast. Had a little bit of a mic issue, I think, from last night's show because some of the settings for StreamYard got a little bit crossed up. We were doing the Bounding in the Comics throwback show. If you guys haven't seen that one, we do that one basically every Saturday afternoon now. Really good episode, me, Cider, and Spencer, but some things got cross-wired on StreamYard, so they're a little out of whack. So I want to make sure that you guys hear me. I'm coming off pretty well here. I'm going to be checking this thing throughout the course of the night to make sure that everything's good to go, but it seems like everything on my end is good. So with that said, welcome to episode 94 of the Bible Lens. We're closing in pretty hot on episode 100. We'll be coming up to that one very, very shortly here in about a couple of months. But before we get into that, I want to go ahead and say thank you all who have reached out over the course of the last several weeks. It has been a big it's really been just a big deal with everything that's gone on here, and I really appreciate everyone coming together, and in a sense that for me, it's not really about, me worried about like myself or anything like that. I just wanted to make sure that those around me are going to, remain strong throughout this time period. And very, very fortunately, that has been the case. So that hasn't been something that I've been worried too much for. But all I can say is that thank you for all the outpouring support over the course of the last several weeks. It means basically the world. And we're going to be moving forward here. Like I said, we're going to be doing some big things here over the course of the next few weeks. We're still kicking. We're still going. So we have no plans on slowing down whatsoever. With that said, let's go ahead and introduce our guys in the chat. We are here live on YouTube, Rumble, and on X, all three platforms here at the moment. We got some people trickling in already. Vanya's already saying evening, folks. We've had Viewful Zygo. I'm just going to call you Viewful because that seems like the only word I can pronounce there. How you guys doing tonight? Good evening to you too. Tree Goblin here saying that Trump has a big black cube in front of one of his buildings. Oh yeah, we're going to talk about that here tonight as well. And then of course several other things throughout the course of this topic. So For those of you guys who weren't with us last week, this is kind of an unofficial part 2 to a topic that we addressed last week. As you guys know, with the break that we had a few weeks back when I was out for a little bit, I didn't get a chance to talk about things that were happening with the Pope here in the United States of America, but essentially, kind of rewind so you understand how we got to this point. Over the last several weeks, the Pope Francis died. We needed a new Pope. I say we needed a new Pope, but you guys know what I'm saying here. A new Pope had to been declared. That new Pope ended up being declared in Pope Leo. It's a situation that we're currently experiencing right now, how he's really being marketed to pretty much the entire world, or especially here in the United States, as the American Pope, as the Pope of the Americas. And there's a lot of American appeal to this Pope. And I thought to myself, given what we've clearly taught here about the Roman Catholic Church over the course of the last several months, last year and a half now, spoiler, just in case you guys haven't heard, they're not the heroes of the story, right? But initially, what I was thinking of before this whole thing started is that, okay, if everything's going to play out the way that we have explained it here, then the next Pope has to be someone who's going to essentially open the door to what we like to call interfaith dialogue. And interfaith dialogue is, like I said, the false teaching that, Christians and Muslims and Jews all worship the same God, when that is absolutely not true under any metric whatsoever. But it sounds really nice to say publicly because it sounds like you stand for some kind of unity when you do stuff like that, right? So we had a couple of names of people who we thought could end up being the Pope based on their track record of interfaith dialogue. Well, the Roman Catholic Church seemingly took a direction no one expected and went with an American rather than obviously somebody from Rome. And in the phase of doing that, shocked a lot of people, both on the left and on the right. And in the course of doing this here as well, you also have to look at it from the perspective of what was the end game of essentially putting in play favor an American Pope. What is the path here? Last week we talked about one instance. The instance that we talked about last week here was this. It was essentially saying that, hey, look, if you look at, everything that's going on right now, one of the big reasons why the Roman Catholic Church would, in fact, select an American Pope, quote unquote, is that they're preparing to make a big push to essentially push the United States of America into push Roman Catholicism into the United States of America, which means that there's going to be a big embrace of Rome here in the U.S. over the course of the next few months, whatever the case may be. A lot of things can happen here as a result of this. So what exactly does that mean for us? Well, the way that I see it is that after reading Revelation 17 a handful of times, as we've done here, it says that very much that the harlot of Babylon, which we obviously make the reference to, that is the Roman Catholic Church in its current iteration, that this entity is going to have influence all over the world. Now, when it means all over the world, I assume it means all over the world, right? Because with the exception of, the argument you can say the Islamic world, at least for right now, when you look at everywhere else in the world, especially in the West, even places in the East, Rome has great influence all over the world. I mean, you look at South America, they absolutely dominate in South America. There's no question about it whatsoever. You see places in Africa, you see places from Australia, places in Europe, obviously, where the Roman Catholic Church dominates as far as a world religion, right? And here in the United States of America, I believe the latest numbers were, I think, in terms of Christians, people who claim to be Christian here in the United States of America, they represent somewhere of about, I want to say 30 to 40%. I don't remember the exact number. I want to say 30%, 40% of Christians here in the United States identify as Roman Catholics, right? Which means that in the grand scheme of things, Roman Catholics here in the United States don't have as much power as they have in Europe or South America, which is why in a lot of instances here in the United States, the version of Roman Catholicism that you see in America is vastly different than the version of Roman Catholicism you will see in Spain and Italy and Argentina and, France and nations like that, and Portugal. And the reason is because, well, they don't have the power in the United States of America that they have in those regions. It's really the same thing when you look at the religion of Islam, which we'll definitely get to here tonight. Everyone likes to make the argument that, Islam is this religion of peace. And the reason why they claim that it's a religion of peace is because they're only used to seeing Islam from an American lens. And from an American lens, Islam has a very, very downright minimal, I guess you can say, influence here in the United States of America from this perspective. If you look at the sheer number of people claiming to be Muslim in the United States of America just by population, it is a micro fraction. I think it's like anywhere between 1% to 2% in the nation total. So because in the United States of America, at least for right now, they don't have very much influence. You really don't see the version of Islam here in the United States of America that you would see, let's say, in Ireland or the UK or in France, or even on a bigger scale. Let's point to Saudi Arabia. Let's point to Syria. Let's point to the Gaza Strip, right? You don't see the same thing you see over here, because the influence is minimal. Now, the problem with this is that a lot of people will look at that and think to themselves, oh, so the American version of these religions that I see clearly aren't that bad due to their numbers and their influence. But when you go to other countries to see what other countries deal with, is a completely different story. But the point is that for the first half of that discussion, last week's episode was really about, okay, if Rome is about to make a push for the United States of America, which means they're going to parade around this new pope from Rome. He's already very, very strongly linked with the Trump administration. J.D. Vance, the vice president of the United States, who's a big-time Roman Catholic, not only was the last person to see Pope Francis, he's also one of the first people to see the new pope as well, as far as world leaders go. Marco Rubio was already over there. A lot of people in the Trump administration are favorable of the Roman Catholic Church. Even Trump himself, let's be honest, his wife is also a Roman Catholic, so he has that influence of Catholicism in Trump as well. This is why I try to stress people, I should say, that as much as we pay attention to politics here in the United States of America, you really have to hammer it down in your head that, hey, look, just because Trump is in charge now does not mean that he is in any way, shape, or form going to be the hero of this story. There's a lot of people in, I guess, the evangelical church who kind of sees Trump as this spiritual savior in terms of the United States of America, that, Trump is somehow single-handedly saving the U.S. by himself. And you see the memes on social media that are very, very cringe, where you have, like, Donald Trump juxtaposed with Jesus, or like as if Trump and Jesus are teaming together to save the country. And I was like, guys, you got to look at it from this perspective. They're not the heroes of the story. Now, this is not something to say that, I'm anti-Trump or anything like that. You guys know very, very well I voted for Trump all 3 times. I'm not even making like a big deal about that. I have. However, I see the bigger picture here. And I think what happened earlier this week with Elon Musk and Donald Trump should be kind of a wake-up call to the bigger picture, because a lot of people looked at both of these guys as guys who are essentially going to save the United States of America. Now, Trump and Elon have their falling out. I would just say this, as far as this whole situation goes, as much as I don't view Donald Trump as the savior to the United States of America from this perspective, I probably trust Elon Musk even less. And I think it's safe to say I definitely trust him even less, because let's be honest, Elon Musk, the richest guy in the world, that we know of, he's a guy who morals is very, very questionable. We all forget that it was only up until a handful of years ago the guy was a leftist. And you can say the same thing for Donald Trump as well, but Elon was definitely far deeper into that, or more recently, than Trump was. Now, of course, when Elon started to, speak out against certain issues, that's when the left turned on him, and now everyone in the left hates him, right? That's essentially where we got here. But Elon Musk is not a guy who I would trust, especially if you're looking at him as some kind of spiritual savior in the United States of America, too. Now, I know there's some people who will take this to an absurd degree and try to make the argument that, oh, Trump is the Antichrist, Elon Musk is the false prophet, this is all revelation. No. And you guys know exactly who I'm talking about, because this guy, despite the fact that he's been exposed as a fraud several months ago, is trying to do the same shtick all over again. People are listening to him all over again. He's the guy making the claim that, oh, Trump's the Antichrist, Elon Musk is the false prophet, they're the beast of Revelation. Well, that whole theory just blew up in your face this week. So you've now been proven as a fraud for the third time since you've started this whole thing. So hopefully we can move on from this false assertion. That's not what's going to happen here. But, like I said, back on topic here. We know that based on the new Pope and based on the Trump administration's relations with the Roman Catholic Church, Rome is certainly going to make a play for the United States of America for two reasons. One is because obviously if they can grow the influence of the Roman Catholic Church here in America, that would be great, because then they can essentially spiritually take over the nation, right? And there's a lot of people, even in Protestant or evangelical circles, who are foolishly opened up to this idea of essentially opening their arms to the Roman Catholic Church and basically calling us to all join hands and sing Kumbaya and be one together again. And I think one of the most devastating things in the church today, and for those of you, this is why I say I'm very, very openly against what the Roman Catholic Church represents. Yeah, there's a lot of people in the Christian community, quote unquote, who downplay the historical influence of the Roman Catholic Church as simply more than, oh, they're just a different denomination. They're no different than the Methodists and the Baptists and the Presbyterians. They just do things a different way than we do. We're all brothers in Christ at the end of the day. And I'm like, no, like, because especially here in the United States with a multitude of people, they don't view the Roman Catholic Church as the enemy as they should. They essentially allow themselves to mingle and spiritually fornicate with the harlot. And that is going to set up not only our nation, but many other nations for a great downfall somewhere in the, let's say, near future, right? Like I said, talked about all this last week. We talked about guys like, Joel Osteen and Rick Warren and Stephen Furtick, all these people who are coming together, embracing Rome. You're going to see these people embrace Rome even more in the coming weeks and months. Even the so-called Calvinist group. You see a lot of them pushing for Christian nationalism, as they call it here. And what is that? I mean, at its core, it's essentially trying to mix the church with the state. And I mentioned this last week. The only entity that's been successful in mixing church in the state, especially worldwide, is in fact the Roman Catholic Church. You do have self-professing Lutherans and Calvinists, and this is why I'm not all in with the Reformers either. You have a lot of people out there that are like, well, you know what? If we can team up with the Catholics and, get the world control out of the commies' hand or out of the leftist hand or out of the hands of the LGBTQ, I'd rather team up with the Catholics than team up with those people, which is essentially just giving them a window to take over control in a way that's going to backfire on the church by and large, right? So that was the big thing. They're pushing for influence. They're pushing for power. And I do believe that very, very soon they will end up getting that. Because when you look at the way that the things are happening in the world right now, you have to kind of understand that these things are happening for a reason. And it's probably because the stage is being set for the time that has been warned about for 2,500 years. However, there is a second issue with why they would be doing this, and it's arguably the biggest one. You can say that this is the elephant in the room here when it comes to this particular issue, and this issue is regarding the nation of Israel. Now, I'm going to unpackage this one for you because I want this to make sense to you guys when we get to the bigger conversation, which is obviously the title here for is Trump in bed with the beast of Revelation 13. So let's set this all up here. Donald Trump, over the course of the last couple of weeks, has notably gone to the Middle East to meet with various Middle Eastern leaders. I have the videos here. We'll set this all up here in just a second. At the moment, I think it's a surprise to no one. I think we can pretty strongly make this declaration for now that the United States of America is the strongest ally that Israel has at this moment. When you poll quite literally the entire world on their points of the nation of Israel, the overwhelming majority of people all over the world have a negative view towards the nation of Israel at this very moment. Now, some are far more negative than others. Obviously, if you look at some places in Europe, it's almost 3/4 of people hate Israel, have a negative view of Israel. You can find negative views in places like Australia, even Japan. A negative sentiment of Israel is very, very strong all over the world. Here in the United States, it used to be more favorable not too long ago, but what's happening is that the younger demographic, I guess Gen Z, millennials, people in that age group, they have been more openly hostile towards the nation of Israel over specifically the last 10-15 years. And you see this in obviously college campuses is an easy way to see this, because where are the majority of the Free Palestine protests happening now? In college campuses. But even the younger demographic online, you see them being openly hostile towards Israel and the Jews as well. The very popular online group called the Groypers, that's kind of Nick Flintez's online group, and they all hate and despise Jews, and they all hate and despise Israel as well. We've seen a lot of people, and here's the thing too, this isn't no longer just a right or left issue, because if you're just going to look at this as right versus left, as Democrat versus Republican, progressive versus conservative, then you're completely missing the bigger picture here, because it's not just a right left issue anymore. Yeah, you see the leftists in college campuses, protesting Israel, standing with Palestine, and damning anyone who doesn't stand with Palestine with them. Yeah, you certainly see that, but you're starting to see a lot more people on the right, the political right, the conservatives, that are openly anti-Israel as well, and openly anti-Jew as well. We talked about Tucker Carlson inviting people onto his platform who are clearly anti-Israel and anti-Jewish, and giving them a platform to speak against the modern nation of Israel. We see Candace Owens, who has been a very, very open proponent of both Israel and the Jews over the last couple of years, ever since she became a full-time member of the Roman Catholic Church. It's almost like there's a correlation there. You see a number of people online. You got guys like Jake Shields, former MMA fighter, who's super against Israel and the Jews. Dan Bilzerian, who was basically some kind of modern iteration of Hugh Hefner for a little while there, because he was known with taking a bunch of photos online with half-naked women and whatnot. Now he's super hostile against the Jews and against Israel, saying F the Jews, F Israel. Stu Peters is another big one. You see these people all over the place, right? So even on the right, the hatred towards Israel is growing. And essentially what the question here is that as the Trump administration influence of Rome grows, and the things that come out of Rome begin to grow here in the United States of America, well, is that going to essentially lead to a point where the United States of America turns against the nation of Israel? Because if the teachings of the Roman Catholic Church, which if you look at where the origin of a lot of these teachings sprouted from, and this is very interesting because I literally got Gronk, the AI bot earlier today, to admit that the teachings of covenant theology, replacement theology, supersessionism, all that stuff actually did originate from the quote-unquote early church fathers that were canonized and obviously called saints within the Roman Catholic Church. These are guys like Justin Martyr, this is guys like Augustine, and so on and so forth here. And essentially, they were the ones in the days after, we're talking about the end of the book of Revelation being written in about 90 to 96 AD. Well, the next couple of centuries afterwards, they're the ones that started teaching that, actually the modern church has completely replaced Israel. It's like all of the promises that were clearly given to the nation of Israel are now represented into the church. And people started teaching that primarily over the course of centuries upon centuries upon centuries, to a point where there was a good nearly 2,000 year period. I would say probably safely 1,800 years, but you can see it almost immediately after the last book of the Bible was written there, that this modern push towards, either the church has replaced Israel, that God's done with Israel, he has nothing more to do with Israel and the Jews, or that the covenant theology angle to this is that, the church was always Israel. So when you read those Old Testament prophecies about the nation of Israel, that actually means the church. one way or another, there are two group of people essentially telling you that the words in the Bible don't actually mean what it explicitly states, right? This whole idea of no, these verses need to be spiritualized or symbolicized and stuff like that. It's like, wait, what? This is a big point of contention. You know, there's a lot of people out there who are against dispensationalism. Well, really, at its core, dispensationalism is a literal reading and interpretation of the Bible, which means just taking the Bible clearly for what it says. But that's a problem for a lot of people who push covenant theology and replacement theology, because in order to buy into that ideology, you have to spiritualize and symbolize what those words actually mean. But what could this mean here? Essentially, I'm just going to lay it out for you here. If Donald Trump were to be in a position where he's being influenced not only by leaders of the Roman Catholic Church, but leaders in these Islamic nations to essentially distance himself from the nation of Israel and essentially be the person to remove their allyship from Israel, well, guess what? Israel will very much be on their own when that happens. And when Israel has no allies left, the enemies who are going to come towards Israel, knowing that they no longer have the backing of the United States of America, are going to be plenty. Let's just put it this way. There's going to be many countries that are going to be licking their chops at the opportunity of finally taking out Israel when the United States of America no longer is there to back them up and support them, right? And this is what leads us to part 2 of this argument here. So there's a couple things that I want to do here. I want to set this up in a grand scheme of things here. So what I want to do is I want to read 1 John for you guys here first, and then we're going to unpack this as we go along here. So I wanted to read 1 John here. This is chapter 4, verses 1 through 3. And we've read this here before, but this is obviously a refresher to the context of what we're about to show you here. This is talking about the spirit of the Antichrist, or the spirit of Antichrist, however you want to pronounce it. We're talking about what is actually the spirit of Antichrist. What is that? The word Antichrist is thrown around so many times, so loosely, and let's be honest, a lot of people who use that term have no idea what it actually means. But the Bible gives you a clear-cut definition to what Antichrist or spirit of Antichrist actually is. So what does it say here? 1 John chapter 4, verses 1 through 3 says here, "Beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirit, whether they are from God, because many false prophets have gone on to the world." We'll get to all those false prophets here in a little bit. By this you know the Spirit of God. Every spirit that confesses that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is of God. Every spirit that does not confess that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is not of God. And this is the spirit of the Antichrist, which you have heard was coming and is now already in the world. So what is the spirit of Antichrist? The Bible tells us very, very plainly here, it is any spirit that tells us that Jesus Christ, the Son of God, God incarnate, did not come in the flesh. So what does this mean? So essentially it is a denial of Jesus Christ, aka a denial of the gospel. So any spirit that denies the gospel is the spirit of Antichrist. Now, notice that he says here, even though we're still awaiting the big Antichrist, he says that the spirit of the Antichrist is, if you heard what's coming, is already here. Now, why is that? Well, if you remember our conversation a couple of weeks back about Gnosticism and as it relates to modern day movies, especially the Mission Impossible movie, we did a breakdown on a couple of weeks ago. Well, if you look back at all of those of movements there, what were they teaching people? Were they teaching that Jesus Christ is the Son of God? They came down here to die for your sins, that he died on the cross, was buried, and rose again on the third day? No, they were telling you the complete opposite. That they were making up quite literally their own Jesus out of complete nonsensical teachings here and placing their faith in that Jesus rather than the actual Jesus of the Bible. And there are a lot of people who do that to this day. This is why, and this will be a preview of next week's episode, because there are so many people out there who infuriate me right now because they're pushing this notion that, you know, in order to be a proper fruit inspector, to figure out if people are actually saved or not. We need to see if they're doing good works, or if they're showing good works in their life, because that's the way you need to figure out if someone's truly saved or not. And it's like, no, that's not the way you figure out if someone's truly saved or not. The way you figure out if someone's truly saved or not, if you want to be a quote-unquote fruit inspector, is very, very easy. Ask them what the gospel is. And based on their understanding and their telling of what the gospel is, you can figure out whether that person is actually saved or not. We'll get to that next week. It's a whole other conversation. But with so many people claiming to believe in Jesus Christ, they believe in a fabricated version of Jesus Christ that is not the Christ of the Bible. Guess what? Mormons have their version of Christ. That's not the Christ of the Bible. Catholics have their version of Christ. That's not the Christ of the Bible. Islam has their own version of Christ. That's not the Christ of the Bible. Hindus have their own version of Christ. That is not the Christ of the Bible. So there are many, many false Christs, just like Jesus said they were going to be in Matthew 24:24. There are many, many false versions of Christ out there. So how can you tell the real one with the false one? Well, all of these false and other Christs are essentially Christ that denied the gospel, denied Jesus Christ has come in the flesh. And as a result of that, they essentially present to the world a spirit of Antichrist. Now, while there's a number of religions out there that profess a spirit of Antichrist, I say that there is one that only you can call quite literally the spirit of Antichrist, or the religion of Antichrist. Now, this leads us to our good buddies of Islam. Now, I'm going to unpackage this in a little bit of a condensed way. I have talked about this in previous episodes, so if you want to go back into more detail and go check out those episodes in our playlist, but let's kind of set it up here. I believe that Islam is quite literally the fulfillment of the religion of the Antichrist, meaning that when we talk about the time period of Revelation and who the Antichrist and the false prophet will actually be, I believe they will both be Islamic figures that come from the religion of Islam, because Islam, by its very core, by its very definition, is a religion of Antichrist. From its very, very core here. So let's set this up here so that this makes a little bit of sense for you guys who probably haven't heard this before. In Islam, Christians are not the only ones who have their own eschatological viewpoints of how the world is going to end. We're not the only ones. They also have this in Islam as well. In Islam, there is a belief that two figures are going to come into the world during the end times, and they will be the hero figures of the Islamic religion. They are awaiting two entities called the Mahdi and Isa, who they refer to as Jesus, right? So these two figures will come into the world into the last days, and that they will lead the world into worldwide justice. Now, when they say justice, that means that they're essentially going to spread Islam throughout the entire world, and that Islam will conquer the entire world until a time period towards the end where a figure called the Dajjal is going to rise, and that he's going to be a deceiver Messiah who's going to deceive the world into believing that he is the Son of God, that he is the King of the Jews, and that the Mahdi and Isa are going to team up to go to war against the Dajjal, and then according to Islamic eschatology, that they're going to defeat the Dajjal in that end time. And then, of course, their version of events ends with Islam dominating the entire world, and once again, peace being essentially brought to the world by the sword. So, in case you weren't following along there, I just laid you out a viewing of the end times from the Islamic world that sounds very, very similar to the book of Revelation, and how it talks about two figures are going to be coming into the end times. They're both evil figures that work for Satan, and that they're going to go to war with Jesus Christ in the end times, right? It's almost as if they're the exact same story, except for the good guys and the bad guys of the story have been completely flipped on their heads. And another link that you can throw in there too is that we've talked so much about Gnosticism over the last couple of weeks. You can almost say that Islam is very much a Gnostic religion, in the fact that it essentially takes what is good and makes good evil, and makes evil good, just like the Gnostics do, right? Brandon, the casual gamer, joining us here as well. So let's shoot over here to Revelation 13. Now this is where it gets interesting. We're gonna read all of Revelation 13 here. This will be a refresher for some of you guys. So some of you guys, you may not have heard this here before, but Revelation 13 talks specifically about the Antichrist and the false prophet, the beast from the sea and the beast from the earth. And for some of you guys who haven't heard this before, pay close attention, because there's very, very close indication here of how this is all going to play out. Revelation 13 says, and I stood, as they said, then I stood on the sand of the sea. I saw a beast riding out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his 10 horns was 10 crowns, and on his heads was a blasphemous name. Now let me go ahead and say this here, right here. This is why so many people get into trouble trying to understand the book of Revelation. This is why you'll have a lot of people out there who will try to convince you that, oh, well, Revelation is just a symbolic book. It's not meant to be taken literally. You're not supposed to believe that these events are literally going to occur. And that's a theme that I've heard and I've played on the show many, many times. You heard this from obviously people in the Roman Catholic camp. You hear this from people in the more Reformed, Calvinist, Lutheran camp, or whatever the case is. Whether it's post-millennialism or all-millennialism or preterism, some kind of form that essentially tells you that, hey, don't take the stuff that happens in Revelation too seriously, because a lot of that's already been fulfilled, or the overwhelming majority of it's already been fulfilled, or all of it's been fulfilled, right? Well, here's the problem. By making the claim that, oh no, Revelation is a symbolic book, you're not supposed to take it literally, well, that goes against the entire nature, I should say, of every other book that's in the Bible, right? And primarily when you're talking about, you hear the first verse here, and it's talking about this beast with 7 heads and 10 horns and 10 crowns. You go, see, it's supposed to be taken symbolically. It's not a literal beast with 7 heads and 10 crowns. It's like, well, hold on a second. Because this is the exact same beast that was described in the book of Daniel multiple times. And what people completely forget about Revelation is that Revelation is the fulfillment of Old Testament prophecies that you find in the book of Daniel, in the book of Isaiah, in the book of Jeremiah, in the book of Zechariah. All of the Old Testament prophets, this is the fulfillment of everything that they talked about. So let me ask you this. Did the Jews in the Old Testament time, or even the Jews today who read the Torah, did they believe that all of these prophecies weren't meant to be taken literally, that they were only symbolic? So then how can we make that same argument about Revelation when Revelation is fulfilling the Old Testament prophecies from all of those other books? This is what happens when you try to essentially understand Revelation in a vacuum and you don't see the bigger picture here. But as we said here, it goes on to explain what all of these things mean. Verse 2, and now the beast which I saw was like a leopard, his feet were like a bear, and the mouth was like the mouth of a lion. Let me just go ahead and highlight this right here. When you hear this, you think, oh, it has to be symbolic, because it says it has the beast I saw was like a leopard, it had feet like a bear, it had a mouth like a lion. This is a reference to the 4 beasts from the book of Daniel. I believe it's Daniel 7, the 4 beasts from the book of Daniel. We've talked about that in nauseam as well here too. He's talking about the nations, or essentially the empires that ruled specifically that portion of the world throughout ancient time. So when you're talking about the leopard here, you're talking about essentially I believe this is the Greece Empire here, obviously. Ancient Greece, Alexander the Great. When you're talking about, oh, it has feet like a bear, well, you're looking at the Persian Empire. Obviously, that's also represented in modern day Iran as well. It's a shocker that Iran happens to be so hostile towards the nation of Israel today and wants them destroyed. It's almost like these things repeat itself. You also have here, it says the mouth like a lion. The lion was a reference to the Babylonian Empire during the time of Daniel, and you can see the Babylonian Empire represented in the modern nation of Iraq. So none of these nations are going away if you essentially cross-read and cross-reference Revelation with Daniel. It explains to you what is actually explained here. You'll figure it out very quickly here, that this is talking about a beast that very much mirrors the leopard, which is the Greece Empire, modern day Turkey, the bear, Persian Empire, modern day Iraq, the lion, Babylonian Empire, modern day Iraq, the last one was modern day Iran, excuse me there. But it's almost as if this beast is going to be almost representative or very much have the same area of control of all those other empires, by the way. And it says here that the dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. Who is the dragon? This is going to come up here very quickly. The dragon, in the reference to Revelation, is Satan. We're going to get back to here because that becomes very, very important here in a second. And I saw one of its heads as if it had been mortally wounded, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world marveled and followed the beast. So they worshiped the dragon who gave authority to the beast, and they worshiped the beast, saying, "Who is like the beast? Who is able to make war with him?" Another thing I want to point out here just real quick. A lot of people get this confused because they see essentially, they read this verse and they think that, oh, well, the Antichrist has to be some kind of like celebrity. It has to be some kind of politician or popular figure in the world, because when they see that the world is marveling at the beast, they think that, oh, he's super popular. Everyone in the world's going to love him. It's like, that's not really what the verse is saying. You got to be very careful about this. It's saying that the people are going to marvel who is like the beast, who can make war with him. It makes a lot more sense if you understand that the reason why so much of the world essentially falls for this individual is because this individual could very well be the fulfillment of a prophecy that is not originated from the Bible, but essentially 25% of the world's population believes that this individual could be their figure. Now, this is the thing here too. Everyone loves talking about the fact that, oh, well, because the Jews rejected Jesus Christ, they're still waiting for their Messiah. So, the Antichrist has to be the Jewish Messiah because they're still waiting for him. He's going to fool them into thinking that he's the real Jewish Messiah. And that's what a lot of people will run with, right? They think that because they rejected Christ, they're still waiting for their Messiah, that the Antichrist is going to be someone who poses as their Messiah. Again, that's not really what the verses here are telling you in that context, because let's be honest here, while everyone focuses on the Jews in Israel, we forget that, oh, by the way, there's another figure in the world called the Mahdi, who 25% of the world's population, that's 2 billion people of the Islamic religion, are also waiting for him, and that he is viewed as a Messiah figure for that religion as well. So like I said, everyone kind of focuses their efforts on Israel and the Jews and kind of ignores that there's a much bigger picture happening here, and because of that, a lot of people are going to miss what's plainly in front of them. Verse 5 here, we're gonna keep going down. And he was given a mouth to speak great things and blasphemies, and he was given the authority to continue for 42 months. Now again, very, very important to note this here. This is also a reference back to the book of Daniel. So if you're gonna make the argument that Revelation is a symbolic book that we shouldn't take literally, then you have to make the exact same point about the book of Daniel. And because no one buys that about the book of Daniel, you can't buy that about Revelation either. And it says that his authority was continued for 42 months. This is talking about the time period of the Antichrist rule. We talked about this last week. The beginning of the tribulation is him signing his covenant with the nation of Israel. The halfway point is when he turns on Israel. And then, of course, the tribulation ends with the Jesus Christ coming back to save Israel and defeating soundly the Antichrist and the false prophet. And then he opened his mouth to blaspheme against God, to blaspheme his name, his tabernacle, who dwells in heaven, and it was granted him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And his authority was given over them, over every tribe, tongue, and nation. So this individual is going to be a conqueror, and he's going to essentially roll over everyone. Now, why is that the case? Well, the reason why it's the case is that the Antichrist, even though he's going to have a short time to rule on the earth, his fate has already been sealed. Jesus is going to be the one to toss him into the lake of fire for all eternity, because that's prophecy. It is written. That means no one can defeat the Antichrist until Jesus returns to defeat him himself. Jesus is the one who defeats the Antichrist, not anyone else. All who dwell on the earth will worship him, those whose names have not been written in the book of life of the Lamb slain at the foundation of the world. So essentially, if your name's not written in the book of life, you are going to worship the Antichrist. What exactly does that mean? That means all unbelievers, all people who at this very moment refuse to believe in Jesus Christ and refuse to place their faith in what he has done, his sacrifice, his death, burial, and resurrection, that during the time of the tribulation, you will be deceived into worshiping the Antichrist. It's going to happen. I know people think, no, it wouldn't happen to me. We talked about this last week, how I believe it's in 2 Thessalonians verse makes it very, very clear. God will send an extremely strong delusion upon the world during this time period that the people who rejected the truth will in fact believe the lie. So you may think that you're smart enough to not get outwitted by the Antichrist, but here's the problem. The longer you go in the tribulation rejecting Christ, the more susceptible you're going to be to the deception of what happens during that time period. If anyone has an ear, let him hear. He who leads into captivity shall go into captivity. He who should kills with the sword shall be killed by the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. Now it goes in to talk about the beast of the earth. This is where it gets very, very interesting. I saw another beast coming out of the earth, had 2 horns like a lamb, and spoke like a dragon. This is a very, very strong indication here of exactly who this figure is, because now we've talked about the Antichrist. This is talking about the false prophet of Revelation. And who is the false prophet? Someone who has 2 horns like a lamb, but spoke like a dragon. Obviously, we mentioned that any reference to a dragon is of Satan. Any reference to a lamb in Revelation is of Jesus Christ. So what does this mean here? He's going to have 2 horns like a lamb, but he's going to speak like a dragon, meaning that he's going to have the appearance of Jesus Christ, but he is going to be speaking on behalf of Satan. So who will most likely fits the bill of who the false prophet is? Well, like I said, if you listen to Islamic eschatology, it isn't just the Mahdi that goes around conquering everything. He is accompanied by Isa, aka the Islamic Jesus. Now, who is the Islamic Jesus? Remember, the Islamic Jesus is a Jesus who will not claim that he was crucified on the cross. Because remember, the core tenet of Islam is that they deny the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. They deny that Jesus Christ was on the cross. They deny that he died on the cross. They deny that he was buried, that he rose again on the 3rd day. They deny all that. They deny he's the Son of God. They said that he's not the Son of God, he's only the Son of Mary. And if you hear Muslims or people in the Islamic faith talk about Jesus, they will only call him the Son of Mary. They will not call him the Son of God. So the core foundation of Islam is quite literally what we would call the spirit of Antichrist, which means that foundationally, the foundation is quite literally Antichrist. And we see here in the future could quite literally be the fulfillment of the literal biblical Antichrist and the false prophet. Because there's only one individual in end times eschatology anywhere in the world that fits this bill, and that is the Islamic Jesus Christ. So here's another reason why deception is going to be so strong during the time of the tribulation. All the people in the world who clearly had no faith in Jesus Christ at that time period, they're going to be confronted by a man claiming to be Jesus Christ. Now, if you look really closely into how the false prophet is described, the Antichrist is given the title Son of Perdition, just like Judas, which means that their damnation was meant as a fulfillment of Scripture. Judas's betrayal of Jesus is for fulfillment of a prophecy in Isaiah. Obviously, the damnation and the defeat of the Antichrist is for fulfillment in both Daniel and here in Revelation as well. The false prophet, however, is not called the Son of Perdition, even though we know for a fact he will also be tossed into the lake of fire when it's all said and done. So what can that be an allusion to? Perhaps the false prophet is not human. Here's my estimation of what this could be. I think the false prophet will be obviously a counterfeit Jesus Christ, who's actually a fallen angel who will deceive the world into believing that he's the real Jesus Christ. And how is he going to do that? Well, in verse 14, what does it say here? Verse 12, I should say. Let me back up to 12 and get down to that. It says that he exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence and causes the earth and those who dwell on the earth to worship the first beast whose deadly wound was healed. What does this mean? That means that the false prophet is the one who leads the entire world into the worship of the Antichrist during this time period. So based on the timeline and how this whole thing works, I believe the false prophet comes into play during the second half of the tribulation. There's been a lot of theories, and I think there's a pretty solid one to concur here, that when the Antichrist during the tribulation seemingly suffers this quote-unquote deadly wound, I think what's going to happen, the same thing that happened to Judas Iscariot, I think Satan is going to enter into the body of the Antichrist, and Satan will be operating as the Antichrist throughout the last 3.5 years during the tribulation. That explains his sudden betrayal of the nation of Israel. That explains why he wants to be worshipped as God, how he starts blaspheming God, how he starts killing the saints of God, starts killing the Jewish people, starts killing the Christians that are on the world in that time period. It makes total sense if you consider that the Antichrist in the last 3.5 years of his reign is literally going to be quite literally, just as Jesus Christ is God incarnate, the Antichrist will be Satan incarnate on this planet here. And then it says here 13, now this is talking about the false prophet, this false Jesus figure. He performs great signs that he makes fire come down from the heaven in the sight of men, and he deceives those who dwell on earth by those signs which he was granted to do in the sight of the beast, telling those who dwell on earth to make an image to the beast who was wounded by the sword and lived. He was granted the power to give breath to the image of the beast, and the image of the beast shall both speak and cause many who shall not worship the image of the beast to be killed. So the image of the beast is going to play a big role here in times. I've talked about the possibility of what the image of the beast could be. If you look into the Kaaba in Saudi Arabia, in Islamic eschatology, there is a belief that the Kaaba is going to come to life in the end times and intercede for those who worship the Kaaba. The Muslims who obviously went to Saudi Arabia to worship. So if you guys know where the Kaaba is that giant black stone, and I know someone here mentioned the black stone. It was Tree Goblin here, I mentioned it earlier. It's a giant black shaped stone that's in the middle of Saudi Arabia, and Muslims go there every single year to circle around it, to pray to Allah, quote unquote, in that pilgrimage, whatever. And they also go to this black rock that's on the edge of the building, and they all try to touch and kiss it because they believe that it brings them great blessings from Allah. Some of them, we can go as far to say that it atones for their sin to go out there and kiss this rock. And in the same token that they believe that this rock is going to come to life, is literally going to grow a face and start speaking and interceding for those who worshiped it during the end times as well. So my question is, what the hell is in that piece of black rock that everyone is worshiping in Saudi Arabia? That was probably $1 million question that we may never know the answer to here. Maybe we find out the answer in the tribulation, and that thing comes to life. We'll see. By the way, if you look back historically at the Kaaba, before the religion of Islam existed, because Islam only existed as a religion in 600 AD. Before then, it was actually a pagan worship site, and the entity that was being worshipped there was Baal. People were worshiping Baal at that same location that they're now worshiping Allah. Take that as you will. Let's continue here. It says here, he causes all, big and small, great and rich, as they say, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their hand and their foreheads, that no one may buy or sell except for those who have the mark of his name, or the number of the beast, or the number of his name. So very important to distinguish this here too. A lot of people falsely claim that it's the Antichrist that brings forth the mark of the beast. It's not actually. The Bible tells us the false prophet is the one who brings forth the mark of the beast and force the entire world to receive the mark of the beast in worship of, obviously, the Antichrist during this time period. So the false prophet is the one who brings forth the mark of the beast. So if this false prophet is a false Jesus Christ who preaches a completely different message than the Jesus in the Bible does, and like I said, he's doing things such as bringing fire down from heaven and doing great signs and great wonders that everyone on the earth who, keep in mind, during the period of the tribulation, never believed in Jesus Christ at that time period. If they start seeing this guy or this entity who calls itself Jesus doing all these things, they're going to be deceived into believing that that guy calling himself Jesus is in fact the real Jesus. And then guess what? They're going to convert to Islam. And then it says here clearly in Revelation that that false Jesus is the one that brings forth the mark of the beast. So by following this false Christ, this imposter, that's why everyone in the world is going to essentially be led to taking the mark of the beast, because they're going to be deceived into a man claiming to be Jesus who is not really Jesus. And the only way you would know that it is not really Jesus, because clearly you can't tell by the things that he does on the earth, because he's going to be doing things that are going to look like miracles and wonders in the eyes of human beings who've never seen anything like that before. So they're going to believe that, well, he has to be the real one, right? That means that Islam was the true religion this whole time, and now I'm going to convert to Islam. This is what's going to happen. Here's the wisdom: let him who understands and calculate the number of the beast, for the number of his man, the number of a man, his number is 666. We'll get to that here in a second, because that's going to be kind of our closing point here. But that's kind of the setup here. Islam, in many, many ways, pretty much mirrors the religion of the Antichrist. So if you're talking about where the Antichrist is going to come from, again, I know there's a lot of people out there that teach that, no, he's going to be a Jew, he's going to trick the Jewish people into thinking he's the Jewish Messiah. It's like, that's not really what the verse is. Like, you got to really pay attention to what the verse is saying there, because the understanding that, the Jews are going to worship him, so he has to be a Jewish figure, that's not really what the Bible says. It says all over the world that people are going to be worshiping. Now, play this out in your minds here for a second, kind of use a little common sense and logic. We know for an absolute fact, that in the time of the tribulation, the entire world, all the nations of the world are going to come against Israel, and they're going to come against the Jewish people. We know this. Zechariah, I believe it's 12:3, says that God says himself that he's going to make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all the nations in the world. All who try to come against it are going to be cut down into pieces. What does that mean? That means that the entire world is going to come against Israel and the Jews during this time period, right? So how can the Antichrist be, quote unquote, a Jewish Messiah, quote unquote, and then deceive the entire world into worshiping him, right? Because it makes no sense in context. If you believe that the Antichrist is a Jewish figure, then that means you would have to believe that the Antichrist is going to come here. He's going to essentially win over the entire world by, his wonders, his might, his conquest and whatnot. Then a false Jesus is going to come into the world, and that he's going to deceive everyone into worshiping this so-called Jewish Messiah as God. Yet somehow they're still going to be against the nation of Israel. They're still going to be against the Jewish people during this time period. They're still going to be killing Jews. So how does that work? How does that work? Because you have two entirely conflicting narratives here. Because it's like, how are the Jews essentially going to be worshiping this Antichrist figure as their Messiah, and then he starts killing all the Jews, and then all the people? Think of it like this. We see anti-Semitism growing in this world right now. Like, you don't have to look at the future of the tribulation. You can look at right now. There's a lot of people who hate the Jews, and there's a lot of people who hate Israel, and it's growing rapidly. Do these people seem like the same ones who would possibly be worshiping a quote-unquote Jewish Messiah in the future? Does that seem like something that will be happening here? Because all roads point to essentially everyone coming against these two entities here. It doesn't add up when you put it together here, unless you actually read what the Bible is telling you there. And like I said, when the Bible is giving you the nations that the Antichrist is going to represent, like he's going to be much like the Babylonian Empire. That's Iraq. He's going to be much like the Persian Empire. That's Iran. Much like the Grecian Empire. Guess what? A lot of that, modern day Turkey. Do you know what the religion of all those nations are right now? They're all Islamic. All of them are Islamic. It's not a coincidence by any stretch of the imagination that all of Israel's enemies that want to wipe it off the map, meaning that just destroy Israel altogether, it's no coincidence that they're all Islamic. We'll get even deeper into this here in a second, because a lot of you guys don't even notice what's on the flag for a lot of these Islamic nations. And this is what's going to make it very, very interesting. I've talked about this here in the past as well. There are, I believe, 3 nations in the world right now that has what is called the Shahada written on the flags of those nations. Do you know what those 3 nations are? They are Afghanistan. Shocker, I'm pretty sure you guys know a lot about Afghanistan. They are Saudi Arabia and also Somalia. If you look up the national flags of those nations, there is Arabic writing on all of those flags, and they all point to the Shahada. Now, what does the Shahada say? It is a declaration that is prominent in the Islamic world. And here's what that declaration says, and it's written on these flags. It says, there is no God but Allah. That's what it says. There is no God but Allah. So it rejects the idea that there anyone else can claim to be God except for Allah. And it also says that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. So what does that mean? That means that there's a declaration that Muhammad is the only true prophet of Allah, God, or in their minds, right? Well, what was the message of Muhammad? Well, the message of Muhammad was simple. Jesus Christ is not the Son of God. He didn't die on the cross. They only have made it appear that he died on the cross. He was assumed into heaven before dying. He never was buried. He never rose again. He didn't die for anyone's sins. And by the way, for some reason, Jesus is going to be coming back in the end times. He's going to be correcting all the Jews and the Christians, letting them know that they were wrong about him. And then he's also going to, and this is their words, break the cross and kill the pigs. Well, we all know what that's a reference to, destroying Christianity and killing the Jews. And there are multiple nations that have this decoration on their flag right now. You know who else also has that decoration on their flag as we speak? Al-Qaeda has that on their flag right now as we speak. ISIS has that on their flag as we speak. And guess what? You guys are paying attention to what's going on in the world, how everyone who opposes Israel supports Hamas. Guess what else is written on the Hamas flag? The Shahada. Are you guys starting to put it together here? Now, let's get to the topic. I'll lay down the groundwork for you here. What is happening in the world right now? A couple of weeks ago, Donald Trump went to the Middle Eastern world to essentially greet the Middle East as, once again, the new leader of the United States of America. There's been a lot of changes that has happened in the Islamic world, but really, if you look at all over the world, there seems to be dramatic regime change all over the world right now. We talked about this, how we got change in the United States. We also had change in the Roman Catholic Church. We had change in the nation of Syria, the nation of Iran, Afghanistan not too long ago, recent change. We had change in Canada, Mexico. It seems like there's a lot of sudden regime changes all over the world. It's almost as if the world is kind of setting up a stage for something much bigger to happen here in the near future. Here's a video of Donald Trump in Saudi Arabia. Now, this is all from his official Twitter account, but this is Donald Trump and then the president visiting a lot of these Islamic nations. Keep in mind, Saudi Arabia is one of the nations I just mentioned that has Shahada written in their flag. Basically letting you know they're not the good guys of this story.
We believe in peace through strength. You have to have the strength. I believe it is God's job to sit in judgment, my job to defend America, and to promote the fundamental interest of stability, prosperity, and peace.
Now, my first question to that to be Donald Trump would be, which God are you talking about? Because, like I said, in case you guys haven't figured this out, Muslims and Christians do not worship the same God by any stretch of the imagination. Let's just put it that way. We do not worship the same God, not even remotely. Just because they call their God Allah does not mean that it's the same God as our God. It's not, because clearly, if their God claims that Jesus Christ is not the Son of God, that he never sent him down there to die for anyone's sins, that cannot be the God of the Bible, which means that there are two entirely different gods, quote unquote, versus the Bible and the Quran. They can't be the same one. So the question is, who is the God of the Quran? Because clearly it's not Jesus. So if it's not Jesus, then who is it? Should be a pretty easy question to answer.
We had 52 days of thunder and lightning on the Houthis in Yemen like they've never seen before.
Listen to what he just said there. They recently had 52 days of thunder and lightning in Yemen like they've never seen before. It's almost as if, I don't know, maybe it's a prerequisite to judgment. It's almost as if there's kind of like a divine warning of something far, far worse that is coming. By the way, we're on the topic of Revelation, a quick little sidebar. There's a part of Revelation that a lot of people skip over, but have you guys heard of the seven thunders in Revelation? The seven thunders of Revelation is the only, I guess you can say, I can't really call it a plague because it's the only event that happens in Revelation that we don't get a clear explanation to what actually happens during the seven thunders. We're told that there are in fact seven thunders, we're just not told what actually happens during those seven thunders, right? So it's kind of a mystery. The Bible doesn't tell us. It tells us about the seven seals, the seven trumpets, the seven vials. We get all that information, but we don't know about the seven thunders. And clearly there's a reason that God did not want us to know about those seven thunders until that time comes. But it's a very interesting thing to research there if you're looking into it. So there you go. Back to the video.
This was a swift, ferocious, decisive, and extremely successful.
So just in case you guys didn't know, he's standing next to Mohammed bin Salman, I believe is his name, who's obviously the Saudi prince. And I don't know if you guys have noticed this. Some of you guys probably have, especially if you're like sports fans of any sort, but Saudi Arabia over the course of the last 10 years has thrown around a lot of its money and a lot of its wealth into bringing a lot of entertainment to Saudi Arabia. And the belief is, and this has kind of been the push here, is that by 2030, this is part of their 2030 plan, but by 2030, Saudi Arabia will essentially be the entertainment hub of the entire world. That's what they believe. And if you look at the money that they have the money to do it. The Saudi, I believe, public fund, the public investment fund, the last time I checked, their public investment fund is about $700 billion alone. That's just their public interest fund. That's the money that they essentially throw away to the rest of the world to essentially boost up the interests of Saudi Arabia. So if you think that Elon Musk is the richest man in the world, he's not. I mean, he may be the richest individual, but we have to look past a lot of other people to get through that, because Elon Musk is worth what, about $250 billion, somewhere within that range. The Saudis have basically $700 billion of quite literally FU money that they can throw away at their leisure. And they believe that Mecca quite literally will end up being the Mecca for the entire world by 2030. Now, could that in fact happen if we are in fact talking about an Islamic antichrist in the end times, that Saudi Arabia could be the headquarters of a lot of things? It's possible, but there's other nations that are involved here too. I mean, obviously we talk about ancient Babylon, that's Iraq. So obviously we're going to be talking about a guy from Syria not too long ago too. So there's other nations in play here, but it's all linked together.
Use of military force. So we hit them hard. We got what we came for, and then we got out. The gleaming marvels of Riyadh and Abu Dhabi were not created by the so-called nation builders, neocons, or liberal nonprofits. The birth of a modern Middle East has been brought by the people of the region themselves. Peace, prosperity, and progress ultimately came not from a radical rejection of your heritage, but rather from embracing your national traditions and embracing that same heritage that you love so dearly.
What is that heritage? The heritage is Islam. That's the heritage. So again, we're kind of presenting this and rolling this out as if this is a good thing, as if this is a positive thing, when in reality, this is probably a sign of something far worse to come. And you guys got to be honest with yourselves here. Like I said, I voted for Trump too, but Trump is at the forefront of a lot of these issues here, and you're starting to see him get a lot more cozy with a lot of these Middle Eastern nations. Here's another Middle Eastern powerhouse, Qatar, depending on how you would pronounce it, but another Middle Eastern powerhouse with a lot of money to throw around, obviously a very strong Islamic stronghold. He went to visit them, and it was a lot more of the same over there.
It's a true privilege to visit your country, special country, and gather as friends. I'm honored to be the first American president ever to officially visit. To the Emir, to the royal family, and to this entire nation, congratulations on a spectacular job. As president, I'm proud that our growing friendship is blossoming into a full-fledged economic and security partnership. We're setting records on this trip. We're bringing a lot of investment back into the United States of America will be well over $10 trillion. I want to thank Your Highness for helping with that number. You know you can count on us, and you know that it's going to be a great investment for you. So tonight, let us give thanks for the blessings of this friendship. We have a great friendship. I want to wish peace to the Emir and to all Qataris. Working together, we can help the entire region unlock its potential. So I just want to say it's an honor to be with you.
That was another video directly from the Trump administration. Here's the last one from Trump. This time he visits the United Arab Emirates, aka the UAE. This is where you find Abu Dhabi and Dubai and that kind of nation. Again, another Islamic superpower that has a whole lot of money. And very, very interesting how all of these Islamic strongholds, and obviously there's some poor ones, we don't want to say all of them, but the big financial hubs, like I said, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, these are very, very, very rich nations. Like these are, like I said, if they were to put all of their money together, you're talking trillions of dollars. And who knows? You know, when we talked about Revelation not too long ago, we were talking about a time period of economic downturn and all this other stuff that's going on. So if we're in a situation where, let's say, the Western world is suffering through a horrific, economic downturn where all of a sudden, no one is making money, universal basic income, jobs are lost and whatnot, who do you think is going to be the nations that at least, kind of survive the brunt of a lot of these harsh conditions that you're going to see here? I would have to assume that the people who currently have billions upon billions of dollars in their disposal, they might not be as affected as a lot of the other people, which means that if we're talking about a complete worldwide economic shift, guess who's going to be essentially the king of the mountain during this time period? It's going to be the Saudi Arabias. It's going to be the Qatars. It's going to be the UAEs. And what do we say about all these nations? They're all Islamic, which means that, if we're talking about an Islamic antichrist, and you see how the power structure has kind of already been set up, like it doesn't really require too much more to happen there.
You're an amazing country. You're a rich country. You can have your choice, but I know you'll never leave my side. And you know the special relationship that we have and our country has. We have now, I think, substantially over $10 trillion of investment. And now when they add the $1.4 trillion, we easily break that number. We really appreciate your confidence.
Now, somebody else brought this up here too. Listen to what he just said there. He says that the UAE has almost $10 trillion of investment with the United States of America now. And people have pointed this out here too. There's a lot of people within the Trump administration who have gone over to the Middle East to essentially gain influence in those nations with a lot of these Middle Eastern giants here. And basically, they're all in a position where they're putting out trillions upon trillions of dollars. So what exactly does that mean here? Let's look at it from a smaller perspective. A lot of people will get upset when, big interest groups throw money around in order to get influence for bills or influences for like special privileges and stuff like that. We see it on a small scale with corporations here in the United States of America, right? We see this on a much smaller scale. Now imagine that on a much more massive scale when you're talking about a country like the UAE that has trillions upon trillions of dollars to throw around in their interest. Let me ask you this. If we're taking interest money from the UAE, from Saudi Arabia, from Qatar or Qatar, do you think any of that kind of spells anything positive for the future of, let's say, Israel? Do you think that this is putting Israel in a good position or in a bad position? Interesting to think about.
And an investment, that's your biggest investment that you've ever made, and we really appreciate it, and we're going to treat you very, as you should be, magnificently. And you're a magnificent man, and it's an honor to be with you. Two countries also agreed to create a path for UAE to buy some of the world's most advanced AI semiconductors from American companies, a very big contract. This will generate billions and billions of dollars in business and accelerate the UAE's plans to become a really major player in artificial intelligence.
I want you guys to pay attention to this. This is actual critical information. He's basically explaining to you right there that the UAE is looking to be a major player in artificial intelligence in the future, which means that the UAE is making a massive, massive push or a massive ploy towards AI. Do you guys kind of see a trend building here? Like, are you starting to see kind of like little small dominoes being knocked over, leading to other dominoes here? Because we've talked about this here before, and we talked about it on the Ballroom last week, on 01 last week. I don't think that anything positive is coming from the AI experiment. I know everyone's looking at the possibility of, oh yeah, we're in a couple of years, we're going to be able to make our own Star Wars movies using AI. It's like, I hate to break it to you, I don't think that that's the play here. I don't think that they're making AI so that you can make your own movies from the comfort of your own laptop. I think that they're setting the world up for a much bigger deception that's gonna fall upon the world, because there will be a time in the future where you're not gonna be able to tell what is real and what is fake from videos. Now, there was a video. Put it to you like this. I'm starting to see people fall for videos that are clearly AI, but they're so well crafted, you can't really tell it's AI. Now, if you look close enough and really study it, you can see kind of the giveaways that let you know that it's AI, but it's gotten to the point where a lot of people's naked eye completely glosses over that. Then they just think that these are real videos now. Like, it doesn't hit them that, oh, that's artificial intelligence. That's not a real video. That's deception. But they don't see it. If they're falling for deception on a small scale, meaning that you see a video of, like, a lion, sniffing a homeless guy in India, and you think it's real, and you find out it's not real. It's like, oh, they got me. Imagine how bad it's going to get when they're actually trying to deceive you with videos crafted by AI. Or on the flip side, what happens when we get to a point where, videos start getting released that are actually real, that are horrific videos involving world leaders, politicians, celebrities, like really, really bad, evil, sick stuff. But then they're going to essentially gaslight you and be, oh no, that's AI. That's not real. That's not a real video. That's AI. Somebody did that in AI. Look at the quality. That's not a real video. And then how many people are actually going to believe that the real videos are real when they're being told that it's fake? So you're going to have fake videos that are actually real, and people are going to be told that they're real. On the flip side, you're going to have real videos. People are going to tell you that that's fake. That alone is going to cause so much havoc and destabilization when no one can actually trust what they're watching anymore. It is going to be utter chaos. So, like I said, I hate to break this to you. I don't think the end game of this whole story is going to be, oh, I get to create my own Daisy Ridley Star Wars video using my laptop and Windows. I don't think that's where this is heading. Guy, I really, really don't.
So it's a great tribute to the job you've done here.
The Arabic family house. I mentioned this in one of the old Pope videos I did a couple of months ago. This is, again, under the whole guise that, hey, Christians and Muslims and Jews, we all worship the same God. So let's all come into a house and worship our God together. Let's all come together for one global religion that all honors the father of Abraham. Again, do you see where this is going?
I'm very proud to be representing the United States of America, and thank you all for being here.
Again, much like the problem with when we look at how people view the Roman Catholic Church, people don't view the religion of Islam. Now, keep in mind, I'm saying the religion of Islam. I'm not saying Arabic people or Muslims specifically. I'm saying the religion of Islam, because the religion of Islam is where everything originates and comes from and spreads out all over the place. So I'm not saying that this is a condemnation of all Muslims, because look, a Muslim can still see the truth and be saved, right? A Muslim can still see through the deception here. Arabic people are, not all Arabic people are Muslim, obviously. That goes without saying. So I'm very, very calculated when I say comes from the origin of the religion of Islam. The religion of Islam is wickedly evil at its core. And the people who follow it, bad things tend to happen as a result of this. I'm chatting with someone who posts about on X, but you can't see it. No. Just don't. All those people are bots on X. Like X, ever since, here's another thing, another reason why I don't really trust Elon Musk. Again, the bot situation on X has gotten significantly worse since Elon took it over. Even though he kind of lied to everyone and told people that he was taking care of the problem, it's only gotten significantly worse since. And it probably is not going to get any better anytime soon. But like I said, if you're getting into an argument with someone on social media, before you get into a long, like days-long argument, do a little bit of research and ask yourself if the person you're talking to is even a real person. Just do that, right? This was from a speech that Trump gave, and this is going back to the Saudi investment not too long ago. Now, this is where he gets a standing ovation for an announcement with the nation of Syria. Now, if you guys have listened to an episode that I did a few weeks ago, you're going to start really getting worried now, because I did mention something about Syria not too long ago, but here's him making a historic announcement about the nation of Syria. Let's play a little bit of this.
As in Syria, which has seen so much misery and death, there is a new government that will hopefully succeed in stabilizing the country and keeping peace. That's what we want to see in Syria. They've had their share of travesty, war, killing, many years. That's why my administration has already taken the first steps toward restoring normal relations between the United States and Syria for the first time in more than a decade. And I'm very
want to play that again, just in case you missed it there. Pay attention.
Relations between the United States and Syria for the first time in more than a decade. Many years. That's why my administration has already taken the first steps toward restoring normal relations between the United States and Syria for the first time in more than a decade. And I'm very pleased to announce that Secretary Marco Rubio will be meeting with the new Syrian foreign minister in Turkey later this week. And very importantly, after discussing the situation in Syria with the Crown Prince, your Crown Prince, and also with President Erdogan of Turkey, who called me the other day and asked for a very similar thing, among others, and friends of mine, people that I have a lot of respect for in the Middle East, I will be ordering the cessation of sanctions against Syria in order to give them a chance at greatness.
And there you see your boy over there, Mr. Elon Musk, sitting right behind the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia here too. But what's happening here? Essentially, he's announcing that he's lifting sanctions against Syria, normalizing the events that are happening in Syria right now. So it's like, it's very, very interesting how this is all playing out here. Do I want to play this video next, or... We'll play a little bit more of this, then we'll wrap it up with the video that I have left here.
Oh, what I do for the Crown Prince. The sanctions were brutal and crippling and served as an important really an important function, nevertheless, at the time. But now it's their time to shine. It's their time to shine. We're taking them all off, and they're going to have, I think they're going to have, based on the people and the spirit and everything else that I'm hearing about. So I say good luck, Syria. Show us something very special like they've done, frankly, in Saudi Arabia. Okay, they're going to show us something special. Very good people. Everywhere we can, my administration is pursuing peaceful engagement, offering a strong and steady hand of friendship to all that will take it in good faith. Together, we have made unprecedented strides and tremendous progress, and we're still just at the dawn of the bright new day that awaits for the people of the Middle East, the great, great people of the Middle East. If the responsible nations of this region seize this moment, put aside your differences and focus on the interests that unite you, then all of humanity will soon be amazed at what they will see right here in this geographic center of the world.
So I need to show you guys this here just for a second. First of all, it's talking about the things that unite us. I mean, for most of these countries, the only thing that unites them is wanting to wipe Israel off the map, right? But it's literally, like I said, you guys got to start seeing this for what it is. You have the United States president, the president of the United States of America, standing on the stage in Saudi Arabia with a Saudi Arabian flag in the background of the shot. And right behind him is quite literally the Shahada, which is on the Saudi Arabian flag, that says that there is no God but Allah, that Muhammad is the only messenger of Allah. So Trump, the U.S. president, standing with a flag in the background that is literally a flag of Antichrist by biblical definition. This is why I said, as much as some of you guys may like Trump and the Trump administration, you got to see that, look, just because Trump is in office does not mean that the events that the Bible said is going to happen upon this world is somehow going to stop. Now, that's not what's about to happen here. And like I said before here too, here's another thing. I know that Elon just had, this big falling out with Trump. I know we're watching this video from a few weeks back, but Elon's now falling off with Trump too. Elon, when he had his little meltdown on social media, threw it out there just so conveniently that, hey, maybe we need to impeach Trump and put up J.D. Vance as the president of the United States. And he threw it out there, and it won't be the only time you hear this. So here's something you also have to consider as well too, is that Trump doesn't have to be the president when all this stuff goes down. You're one incident away from having President J.D. Vance. And what does that mean? That means you're going to have a president who's going to be 100%, even 1,000% in the pocket of the Roman Catholic Church. And obviously he's going to have forward that quote-unquote relationship of peace with a lot of these Islamic nations. And with all of these entities coming together, they have one common sore point, one common sticking point with all these individuals here. That is Israel. So where does that lead us here? Well, here's the final video that I'll play here for a second. This is a video from a couple weeks back as well. And like I said, when he was meeting all over the world, he also met with the current leader of the nation of Syria, the current president, Ahmed al-sharaa, which, keep in mind, we talked about him several weeks ago in an answer about whether he was actually going to be the quote-unquote Antichrist. I will say this. I want you guys to highlight these verses on your own time, but it is Daniel 11:29 through 45. I want you to read Daniel 11:29 through 45 on your own time, and I want you guys to answer two simple questions for me. I want you to answer what nation represented the king of the north and what nation represented the king of the south. And when you figure those out, you'll figure out exactly where the Antichrist is going to rise from in the end times. Read that one on your own time. I'm giving you guys one as a freebie here. But here's Trump meeting with the new president of Syria. They're having a meeting together. Keep in mind, this guy was literally a jihadist. He was part of al-Qaeda. We had a $10 million bounty on his head up until he became president of the Syrian region here. But here's Trump meeting with president of Syria here, who may or may not be the Antichrist described in the Bible.
am also ordering the cessation of sanctions against Syria to give them a fresh start. It gives them a chance for greatness. It gives them a good, strong chance. And it was my honor to do so. I want to make a deal with Iran. I want to do something if it's possible. But for that to happen, it must stop sponsoring terror, halt its bloody proxy wars, and permanently and verifiably cease its pursuit of nuclear weapons. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. I don't imagine there's anybody at this table or anybody in this room that would say they can.
One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Syria, that's like 9. It's almost 10 nations you got standing over there, folks. I don't know if you caught that. That's almost 10 nations. Now, look, let me be very, very clear here. Am I saying that these are the 10 nations of the Antichrist? I would have to say no, because I can verifiably see here there's a few nations that I think are missing from the bigger picture here. So I'm not telling you that these nations here are 8 or 7 of the 10 nations of the Antichrist. But let's just put it to you this way. I would be surprised if Saudi Arabia is not on the list. I would be thoroughly surprised if Saudi Arabia is not one of those 10 nations. I can't guarantee you what the other 9 will be, but I can guarantee Saudi Arabia is going to be one of them. And this is where we're at now. So what is happening in the grand scheme of things? We're going to wrap things up here in a second. What was happening in the grand scheme of this entire story here? The grand scheme of this entire story is this, is that over the last several weeks, there has been a noticeable shift in the Trump administration's relations with the nation of Israel. They're not nearly as tight as they used to be, and there's a reason for that. According to some sources inside of the Trump administration, with the world essentially turning on Israel more and more every single day, the Trump administration views the U.S. support of Israel as an unpopular topic at the moment, meaning that in order for Trump to maintain his deem of popularity in the United States and in the world right now, he can't be as comforting to the nation of Israel like he was in the past. But at the same token, he's going around and he's quite literally buying influence or gaining influence from these Islamic nations that are throwing around a lot of money right now. Islamic nations that don't have good relationships with the nation of Israel at the moment. So as Trump becomes more cozy and cozy with Saudi Arabia, the UAE, with Qatar, with Syria, with Turkey, and then a lot of these nations, well, he's going to be hard pressed to come out and vehemently support a nation like Israel, who sees enemies all around all these other nations. Now, I'm not saying that he's going to go all in on it, because like I said, there are a couple of problematic Islamic states that do cause problems for this whole scenario. You still got Iran out there, obviously. We talked about Iran earlier in Revelation 13. You still got Iraq. You still got Turkey. You still got a few problem childs out there who are making it difficult for true unity in the Islamic nations. But there's going to come a time in the near future where that veil is going to be completely removed here. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how this all plays out in the future. So what am I saying when this is all put together? Over the course of the next few weeks to few months, you're going to see essentially a push for Rome to endear itself to the United States of America, both to the leadership and to the people here. And what people don't realize, and it's very, very funny, I got into a little argument with Gronk. And you guys know Gronk is Twitter's a little AI thing, but Gronk initially tried to make the proclamation that, hey, when it comes to the Roman Catholic Church, they didn't actually create replacement theology and covenant theology. That was the reformers. As a matter of fact, they're actually against it. But then when you look back to the people who are called saints within the Roman Catholic Church, guys like Justin Martyr, Augustine, Irenaeus, a few of those names like there, you can figure out what they taught in the 2nd and 5th century when the Roman Catholic Church was rising in prominence. A lot of those people essentially ran with the teaching that the church is the new Israel, that they're fulfilling all the old covenant, the new covenant in the church. All the promises that were for national Israel, those belong to the church now. That obviously involved into supersessionism, which is, the church has completely and totally replaced Israel. The believers have completely and totally replaced the Jews. And that's been a prominent belief in the church for almost 2,000 years now. Even in so-called Protestant circles and evangelical circles, they're buying into that now as well. And it all originated from Rome. And this is what I want you guys to kind of understand here. All of these heretical teachings, all of these things that conflict the church to this very day, all of these items originated from Rome. And like I said, all of these entities left Rome, which means that at one point in time, they're all going to return to Rome. And I think you're going to see the early stages of this here. Well, what does that mean? That means that if you look at it, no matter what way you try to slice it, as much as the Roman Catholic Church will try to convince you that they're an ally to Israel, they're not. Catholics who are in the Roman Catholic Church are very, very hostile to the nation of Israel because they believe that the Vatican and the Roman Catholic Church has replaced them. And if that belief and that system begins to gain prominence in the United States of America, where all of a sudden it becomes very, very unpopular in the United States of America to support Israel, and you have a lot of people in the administration who no longer wants to support Israel while they're playing footsie with a lot of the Middle Eastern nations that also hate Israel. What that means is that very, very rapidly, you're going to be looking at a realistic future where the prominent people and administration here in the United States, they're going to one day turn their back on the nation of Israel. And I think that the day that happens, when Israel realizes that the United States is no longer their ally, they're going to realize very quickly they're on their own. They're going to realize very quickly that there is nobody there to help. Because once the United States squares off of Israel and joins with the beast nations, as I like to call them, well, who's going to protect them then? The answer is no one. No one until they end up signing a covenant of peace with a man who we're going to refer to as the Antichrist. And that is when the events of Revelation are going to go full steam ahead when that happens. So the real answer to this question is, how close are we to these events taking place? I feel like that if a couple more dominoes fall here, you're talking about a matter of months, not a matter of years. Now, I know a lot of people don't want to believe that because, let's be honest here, a lot of people are living very much by the world right now, which means that if you were to tell them, even if you were telling them the truth, that hey, the rapture and the start of the tribulation could be anywhere from months to a couple of years away from happening, they wouldn't want to hear you, because that basically means that, hey, all the stuff that I currently enjoy in the world right now, whether it's family, wives, girlfriends, things that I have, material items, stuff like that I have, if you're telling me that all that's going to go away in the near future because this end of the world prophecy is coming, that's going to make a lot of people upset. They probably don't want to hear it. Well, the problem is that this is going to happen whether you want to accept it or not. The answer is, how do I avoid being caught up in these situations? Well, there's only one way to do so. 1 Corinthians 15, 1-4. This is the gospel that saves you. Now, I know a lot of people think that there's other ways, other things you have to do in order to be saved. But no, this is what the Bible says very, very clearly. Moreover, brethren, I declare to you the gospel which I preach unto you, which you have received, which you stand by, and by which you are saved. If you hold fast the word which I preached to you, unless you believed in vain, for I delivered to you first of all that which I also received, that Christ died for our sins according to the scriptures, that he was buried, that he rose again on the third day according to the scriptures. That's 1 Corinthians 15, 1-4. That's the gospel of salvation. Jesus then doubles down on this by saying, I'll go ahead and quote this one here in King James, just for you guys out there listening. Verily, verily, I say unto you, he who heareth my word and believeth on him who sent me hath everlasting life, shall not come into condemnation, but is passed from death unto life. What does this all mean on the grand scheme of things? This all means that when it's all said and done, no matter how close we are to this whole thing happening, you will not survive the events that come next unless you place your faith in Jesus Christ. And there is no other third option. We're getting dangerously close to the point where you are either going to have to make a choice to accept Christ or reject him, and then that's it. That's all you're going to have left. So now would probably be the time to start taking this seriously, because we're getting very, very close to that moment here. And we'll leave it at that for tonight's episode. Next week's episode 95 of the Bible Lens, I'm going to do this here for next week's episode. Because once again, we have people confusing what the gospel actually is. Because there's this argument on social media that, oh, well, you can't just sin willfully and be saved. You can't just go out there and fornicate and drink and watch porn and steal and do all these bad things and still be saved. Because if you're doing all these things, you may not actually be saved. I thought I put a tombstone on this argument several months ago, when people like Stephen Lawson and other hypocrites who were making this argument have basically been caught in their own willful sin over the last several months. But people are still making this argument, and the source of this comes from people desperately trying to become fruit inspectors by trying to gauge who's really saved and who's really not saved by their fruits, quote unquote. And once again, this is leading to a lot of confusion. This is leading to a lot of people questioning their salvation, because now we're back to people think to themselves that, oh, well, I haven't done enough works. I haven't done enough good. My life hasn't changed enough. I might not be saved. I must not be saved. And I have to do these works in order to prove my salvation, or earn my salvation, or maintain my salvation, or keep my salvation, or merit my salvation. And they're all wrong. So next week, episode 95, we're going to talk about the folly of fruit inspectors. And there's going to be a lot of people who we're going to throw under the bus next week, because they're all leading people astray about the simplicity of what it means to be saved. There's a difference between what you have to do to be saved and your conduct as a Christian. They're not. We'll get into it next week, episode 95 here in the the Bible Lens. Thank you guys for joining me for tonight's episode. Thank you, Vanya. Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Tree Goblin. Thank you, Viewful, for joining us here on tonight's show. The next couple of days are going to be like this. Tomorrow we have 01. I'm probably going to be there a little closer to about 7 or 8 o'clock there for tomorrow night's show over on Bounding in the Comics. So go check us out over there, Bounding in the Comics channel. Tuesday we have the Bar Room. We're going to have the Bar Room at 8 o'clock. Talk about the topics of the week there. Saturday we're going to do another episode of the Untitled Nostalgia Show over at Bounding as well, and I do have movie reviews coming out. Ballerina should be out here in the next day, should be out tomorrow. I got a couple more that we're going to be working on getting those out. I got a lot of catching up to do, because let's be honest, with everything that's happened over the last couple of weeks, I haven't really watched as many movies as I would like. So there's a number of films that I do need to play catch up on, and hopefully I can do that for the next couple of days. It's hard to play catch up when you're also in the middle of a move as well. So once I have a little bit of stability time, I'll have a lot more stuff to output there. So till then, thank you very much for joining us here. I hope to see you guys next Sunday. If not, I'll see you on Monday. If not, I'll see you on Tuesday. If not, I'll see you again. So till then, adios, good night, and goodbye.
Once I turned to Jesus and I realized how he had changed my outlook on life, not just softball, but understanding how much I have to live for, and that's living to exemplify the kingdom. And I think that brings so much freedom.
David, I know share a strong faith. How does that help you on a night like tonight?
It's everything. Christ's resurrection is everything. Not just his life, but his death and resurrection. You can only get that through him, the Holy Spirit only through him. No false prophets, no Muhammad, no anyone else. Only Jesus Christ himself.
Let me tell you one more thing. This might be the most important thing you'll ever hear. There is true freedom, a freedom that no one can take from you in the name of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. Don't ever forget that. If you remember one thing I say, remember that.
And I've got lots to tell you. Believe in the Lord Jesus Christ and you will be saved. Now your reaction to what people who want you off the spotty shortlist?
Believe in the Lord Jesus Christ and you'll be saved.
And what about you being stripped of your belt? I mean, that's you must be very unhappy with that. What's your reaction to that?
Jesus loves me. He loves you too, and he loves you too. He loves these people in here, and he loves everybody in the world. All you've got to do is repent of your sins, and you will be forgiven.